In this episode of Edgy Edge Functions, we're going to take a look at how you can run Dart Edge on Supabase Edge Functions. Now, Dart Edge is a project created by Invertase, our partner, and it allows developers to compile their code so that it can run in various Edge environments. This is super exciting for Flutter developers like myself because it finally allows us to write not only front-end code, but back-end code using our favorite programming language, Dart. Let's dive in. Before we get started, there are two things we need to do. That is to install the Edge CLI, created by Invertase, and install the Supabase CLI. Now, the instruction to install the Supabase CLI will be in the description below. And in order to install the Edge CLI, all we need to do is to run dart pub global activate edge. Now, I've already got the Edge CLI on my machine, so I'm not going to run it, but it's as easy as just running that command. Now, once we have both of those CLIs, we can initialize our project by running edge new Supabase functions, and we can give it a project name. I'm just going to call my new project. Now, this is going to create our boilerplate code in our new project directory, and we can also initialize Supabase within this project. So we can cd into new project, and we can run Supabase in it. Now with this, our project is pretty much set up. We can open it up with our favorite code editor. For me, that is VS Code, so I'm just going to do code dot and open it up. Awesome. Now, as you can see, it just looks like a typical Dart project with pubspec YAML and lib directory and whatnot. And we will want to run pubget so that we can install our dependencies. Great. Now we can open up a lib directory and see that there's a main.dart file. And this is where we write our edge functions, basically. Now, before we get any fancy, let's try to run these functions locally. And in order to do that, we need to first compile the code into JavaScript so that it can run on Supabase Edge environment. And we also need to start running Supabase locally. So let's just do that. So in our first terminal, we are going to run edge build Supabase functions --deb. So this is going to build our Dart code and compile it into JavaScript code so that it can run on Edge environment. And then it's also going to watch our code so that whenever we make changes to the code, it'll just run the compilation process again. We can open up another terminal. And in here, we can run Supabase start, which will start Supabase locally, and you would have to have Docker running locally before you run this. Now Supabase is starting. This may take a while depending on a few different things, but okay, now it's done. And then we can actually run Supabase functions serve dart edge no verify JWT. This will start the functions locally, and we can access our functions with localhost 54321/functions/v1/dart edge. And it says hello from Supabase Edge Functions. That is beautiful. We can verify that it's recompiling whenever we make changes by saying hello from Supabase Edge Functions. This is exciting. Okay, save that and maybe give it a refresh. Okay, awesome. We can see that it's working. Now that we have verified that the functions work locally, I want to take a step further and I want to access some Supabase database from within this function. Now, in order to do that, we have to install some dependencies. So let's just do that. So I'm going to open a new terminal and we are going to install first the Supabase client. So that'll be Dart, pub, and Supabase. Remember, this is not Supabase Flutter, but the Supabase, which is a client library for non-Flutter environment to access Supabase. We also need a special HTTP client that is compatible to be run on Edge environment, and that'll be Dart, pub, add Edge, HTTP client. Okay, now that we have installed both dependencies, we can update our functions. So we want to first initialize our Supabase client, and that'll be, okay, let's actually initialize it within the main function. So we can have a final Supabase equals Supabase client. And we need a Supabase URL and Supabase key. But the good news is Supabase automatically populates our environment variables with these URLs, which is also accessible through Dart Edge as well. So what we can do is we can access dino.env and then get the Supabase URL. And the Supabase key will be dino.env.get. Now we have two options here. We can access the admin key or we can access the service role key. But and it really depends on what the particular use case is, which one you want to use since it's a server-side environment. But today we're just gonna use the service role key, which can bypass all the role level security so that we can retrieve whatever information we need from Supabase. So that will be Supabase service role key. Okay, awesome. And we're just gonna say we know that it's not null, because we know it's not. And now that we have a Supabase client, we can access some database, maybe something like, oh, one important thing that I forgot. We also need to pass a custom HTTP client because this is our Edge environment. So we can pass it like this. HTTP client is going to be Edge HTTP client. Simple. Great. Now that we have a Supabase client, let's access our database. So let's see. We can first go into our local Supabase instance, so localhost 54323, and let's just create a dummy table. So let's create a, let's see, users table, enable role level security, why not? ID, created it. We may not need to create it at. Let's just give it a name, and we are just going to make it a text field. Save. Let's just create a single dummy role. So test user. Awesome. Now that we have some data in our Supabase database, we can fetch those data. So final data will be await, and we want to make this async. Await Supabase from users. Select. We're just gonna select all the data from our users table. And within the return response statement, we can say response.json, and we're just gonna pass the data and see what we get. So let's see, let's go back to our functions and refresh. Okay, great. We are actually seeing the test data that we have in our local Supabase database. This is awesome. I think we're ready to deploy this project to prod. So let's go back to our terminal and let's actually get ready for deployment. We can actually stop the local Dart Edge build process. Now, in order to deploy our app to prod, we can run the edge build Supabase functions command. This will compile our functions once again, and then we can just run the deploy command, which is Supabase functions deploy dart edge. And then we also need to pass the no verify JWT command. And then it's going to ask for a project ref, which I can just copy and paste from my prod Supabase instance. And copy and paste it there. And just like that, our function is deployed. Let's take a look at our dashboard. So we can go to Edge Functions, and we can see that our function is deployed right here. Now, let's keep this endpoint URL. And I've also already gone ahead and created the same users table that we created earlier in local version of Supabase. I have our lovely DevRel team. But let's see if our function will show this users list table. And just like that, it does have all the beautiful team members that I have on my DevRel team. That was amazing, wasn't it? It opens up so many new possibilities for us Flutter developers. One thing to note about .edge is that it's still experimental, so it might not be suited for production environment unless you want to live on the edge. Well, that was it for this week's Edgy Edge Functions. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you later with more Edgy Edge Functions content.